And we are live. Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. I'm just going to press live here on Instagram on both sides. I'm trying to get it both going at this. There we go. We are live there. Just apologies from our guest has had an emergency come up. Life happens. We know that. And I'm just always grateful. Jamila's always here, whether she's in a shopping mall, whether she's at home, wherever she's dialing in from. But thank you, Jamila. Over to you to say hi to everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Anissa, and welcome everybody. I'm based today at Santon City. um, and yeah, it's just been crazy. And like you say, life happens. So we got to stop wherever we are and accommodate what we need to do. So I do apologize for the any noise in the background. But I mean, this was the best place for me to set up other than being in the back of an Uber on my way home, which wouldn't have been ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a great week, and I can't believe how quickly the Friday has come by again. Um, how's things been on your end, Anissa?
Well, as I said to you just before we went live, it's been insanely busy, but in an inspiring way. I was also a little bit ill this week, and I still am having the last bits of a whatever this head cold is. It started last Saturday actually, and it steadily. I was flat on Tuesday, Wednesday, flat completely. But I'm
Yeah.
back, and we still have to be on, and I am feeling a bit better. But this
Yeah.
weekend in store for me is my bed.
I think that's amazing that you take care, and it's so important for us, to make sure that we prioritize self care. And yes, a lot of people have been complaining about this flu and that it's a strain of COVID, and that you
Mm,
start to feel better, and then as soon as you say you feel better, it kind of knocks you off your heels again.
agree.
But Anissa, I think, we had our guest who was going to come on today and speak about burnout to
Yes.
boundaries, right?
How
But
apt.
how much of the flu that we think it might be could actually be some form of burnout? Because as we've
Absolutely.
spoken on many occasions before, we started off and it was just the other day that it was the beginning of the year, and we are almost on the step, of August now. And I think, like I said to you, it seems like it was just last Friday, yesterday. And time is going by so quickly. We continually push our boundaries further and further, and we exhaust ourselves in the
Mm.
process of doing that. So, when do we actually say to ourselves, enough is enough? Is this weekend in bed enough for you to recover? Or is it something that we need to be more, consistent about?
Mm.
So that we prioritize ourselves and we prioritize our mental and physical health and well-being.
Yeah, I mean, it's so apt because if like we are all experiencing this on a daily basis, and I think you're right. It We need to take stock. Is a weekend really going to do it for me? I mean, I on one of my programs, I sent the head of programs something from the previous month, and I said to her, "My head, I'm not in top form here. It's a sign that if one is making such silly mistakes along the way, it means that that your body giving you different signals that you actually need to take a pause." And then there's the mom guilt because it's school holidays. You pass that stage, Jamila. So I have my 10-year-old around me. Then I have, my youngest is here all the time and he doesn't always have a play date. So then you're sitting with mom guilt, like you're doing the business and focusing on work, and you're not giving some attention to your kid because you need to be on top of the business to grow the business amidst other stuff that's also happening. So it has been a week of, again, reflection to say, I need to listen to my body because this that I've got going started last Saturday. And it's not only the flu, if I have to answer your question, it is a multitude of things because mentally I'm in my head right now, but not in a negative way, but there's just a lot going on. So one also has to be clear around, even though it's perceived to be all good and positive and it's exciting things on the radar, there still needs to be an intentional pause that one's got to take, because I mean, we're talking about redefining leadership. This is redefining self leadership because if we know ourselves well enough and we know the signals we get that we're not in top form, then we need to take those intentional pauses.
Absolutely. And this is the thing is that we feel like we are accomplishing things and, we're achieving our milestones and all the rest of it. But at what cost?
Mm,
Because, you get to and I think now individuals, even as early as their 30s or 40s or 50s, and you're already starting to feel some sort of brain fog. You're starting to feel like,
mm,
you're making irrational decisions that are not in line with what your true personality is like.
mm,
And how much of that is actually a cause of burnout and stress and depression? And how much of that is something that we can actually avoid? I was speaking to a young girl, my trainer today. I mean, I think she's in her early 30s, must be probably 30 or 31. And we were having a chat, and she was just saying to me that, I was seeing my psychologist, and she actually asked me to go on some antidepressants for a little while. And
oh,
she says that she has started it, and she won't be on it for too long. But what she's noticed is that the brain fog has started to lift. She's now questioning some of the decisions that she made before as to how she's viewing it right now. So, it's really important that we take a step back and we look at what our lifestyle is like. And
mm,
again, Anissa, it's about us taking cognizance of what toxic resilience is and what our view of it is.
yeah,
We tend to
yeah,
glamorize it as something that is kind of a superhuman quality in us. That we can take on all these different
true.
roles and we can multitask and we knock it out of the park and we've achieved, from this step to this step to this step. But what actually are we doing? What is
Mm.
what are the negatives that we are incurring into who we are as people? When we
I
look at
mean,
our exhaustion levels, when we look at the resulting mental distance that is incurred from that, I don't think that we're asking those questions enough, or we're not having the conversations enough with our colleagues to see that
mm,
this is actually becoming a problem.
yeah, I mean, I'm just one for those that are just joining us from all the different platforms. Our topic today is about burnout to boundaries. And the idea was, how do we redefine leadership? Our guest, again, apologies for Heather Brayshaw, couldn't make it due to an emergency. We hope that all is well. But some of the things that we have just already discussed, and it was on our post, is letting go of the pressure to be the strong one. That's the toxic resilience that you alluded to. And then redefining success through grief and growth, whatever the grief may be, whether it is loss of a person passing on or other forms of losses. Um, Building a life and career rooted in purpose, not perfection. And I'm not going to mention the other one, but I'm seeing that there were some things that was important for us to actually look at, um, around our identity that we have attached to certain ways of being or showing up, and then the weight of imposter syndrome also. So we keep on showing up because we feel like potentially others might find out that we don't have it all together, so we feel like an imposter, or we don't have all the answers, or we not in the right role, whatever the context might be. But it's what we've said here is there are so many emotional layers of burnout. And we need to understand that setting boundaries isn't a luxury, but a lifeline. So I want to just talk to that because people always feel discomfort with setting boundaries. But boundaries is a form of self respect. And saying no or no is also a full answer, as we know. But why do you think people are finding it difficult to set boundaries, Jamila? And have you been in a space where you couldn't say no and you were always on? And have you found yourself experiencing that in the past? And how did you overcome that?
100%, of course. I mean, I didn't even know that the word no existed because I was such a people pleaser.
Yeah.
And I had to do everything to make everybody else happy because I felt that that gave me that that acceptance from the outside, that external acceptance. Um, but if you look deeper into that, that came from a space of um, lack of self confidence, lack of self
Mm,
esteem, not feeling good enough, not feeling that I was enough at all. So, yes, I mean, most of my life, I would say, I just never knew how to say no because I always prioritized everyone else's needs over my own. And like I say, Anissa, we brought up to feel this way. You brought
mm,
up to perceive success or a success as a woman is in being a good mother, a good daughter, a good daughter-in-law, and everything that depicts is external, right?
mm,
It's external validation until you get to a point where I think you burn out, because there's only so much that you can do, and it starts to affect different aspects of who you are from a cognitive, physical, mindful space. And some people, unfortunately and sadly, don't get the opportunity to delve into this and to be able to express those boundaries and to cement those boundaries, into
mm,
um, clear definitives. But I think for me, I was fortunate enough that I experienced somewhat of a nervous breakdown. There was one point where I was just in a mall and I just burst out crying in the middle of the mall, and I just couldn't take control of my emotions, which was completely not typical to my personality. Um, and that's when I realized, I have to stop and I have to now look at who Jamila is and what Jamila needs. And
mm,
in doing that, in discovering everything that I was going through, what I was feeling, the symptoms that I thought that I was having, um, and justified it or made, you know, reasoning, reasonable understanding of it. As I thought, okay, maybe I'm just getting older now and stuff, getting forgetful. Maybe I can't sleep at night because, as you get older, this is naturally what
mm,
happens, but it actually isn't. You don't just become emotional because you're older, where you can't control your emotions. No, that's a form of burnout and stress. You don't just start to have brain fog or stop remembering stuff in your early 40s. That's also due to burnout and stress.
mm,
And so I had to have a look at what it was that I was doing and what I could change. And through that came a beautiful experience and journey of self discovery. And this is the first thing that we should actually allow ourselves to gift to ourselves, is to find out more about who we are, to prioritize who we are, and to start seeing ourselves from the the qualities and the values that we embody, rather than what we can give to others out there. So for me, I think that that's step one, is to acknowledge that you don't have to be a people pleaser to be liked.
Mm,
You
mm.
can say no. You can have your opinions. You can make your own way, and the right people will like you.
I can relate to all of what you said because I'm the recovering people pleaser and hero, savior, rescuer in all my relationships. That what's attached to that is what I mentioned earlier on, the strong one, the reliable one, those labels that we get labeled as the go-to, the survivor, the overcomer. In fact, more recently, I think it was last week, I had to tell a friend that I've known more than 2 decades because she knows where my business status is right now, that I'm rebuilding. And she was like, "Yeah, but you're strong and you've got this." There's a boundary that needs to be enforced there too. And it's so interesting that we think that that's not a boundary that needs to be set, but I think it is. And I'm only discovering that now. Because in the past, that label of, "Oh, you're so strong and you're so reliable, and we know we can come to you, and you know how to take the lead on things," or you cook so well, and it's great when you do the cooking, when we do our gatherings or connects, because you are the better cook. So from an entertainment perspective over the years, it was Anissa's house because she was the better cook. And I was like, yes, yes, of course. But as you grow older, you realize our strengths, even in our strengths, we need to be setting those boundaries, because otherwise, one, people will take it for granted, intentionally or unintentionally. And two, they will lack empathy in truly actually holding sacred space for you when you also need that sacred space, when they're not recognizing that you potentially are in a state of burnout or moving towards burnout, because they are so used to seeing that toxic resilience and positive and enthusiasm from you, that they almost think that you're just going to overcome and rise above and be like that phoenix rising all the time. We don't want to be that all the time. We are all human. So, for those that are listening, I encourage you to reflect and truly think about the people in your circle that you think are strong. Maybe just be a bit more discerning and check in with people, because those that are strong are actually sometimes needing you more than you even will comprehend that they need you. So that's just a little bit of feedback from my side. I see my
Yeah.
daughter's messages coming through here. She's skating, so apologies, I was a bit distracted there. This phone and laptop messages coming through. All good. Yeah, Jamila, I don't know what your thoughts are on that point.
I think Anissa, what we need to ask ourselves a very important question is, do am I being liked for what I can do for someone or for who I am as a person? And the minute that you can answer that, then that's self-explanatory, I think,
Mhm,
because then you
mhm.
realize who the people, the beneficial people are that are meant to be in your space,
Yeah,
and the rest of them you let go of it. There's no point in you creating that resistance or trying to
mhm.
overcome that resistance for something that's not meant to be in your space, or someone that's not meant to be in your space.
That's an
So
interesting perspective.
yeah, I mean, so that's it, always comes back to and questioning yourself,
Mm.
and taking accountability for yourself. Is it me that somebody wants, to enjoy and to be in company with, or is it because of what I can give to these people? um, and I think it's really important for you to understand what the difference is.
You mentioned something earlier on. So you said that, and you used this word gift more than once when you spoke earlier. You spoke about breaking down in the mall, and that being actually a gift to you because you had to really sit down and discern around who are you and why you show up in that way. Then you spoke about again the gift. You spoke about the gift in so many contexts right now. So even though it's not the pleasant experiences, Those are also our gifts. And I love the way you framed it to say, don't create the resistance, just walk away. And don't even, the part that I might have a little bit of dissonance to is not having the conviction to speak up and to actually say to people, because then you're just going to repeat a cycle. You'll find a new group of people and that cycle will repeat. So the reason why I'm saying speak up, because especially those closest to us, they unintentionally may be doing it because you've co-created how people see you and what they can get from you. So I'm mindful that that was me, and I take ownership for it. Like that need to please and do and be the doer in the relationships more than anything else. But it's draining. It's draining, and that can lead to major burnout in all contexts of relationships, your friendships, work, your peers and colleagues, family members, because you're the go-to for everything.
Yeah, absolutely, Anissa. That's a that's a great point for us to keep in mind. And yes, we
Mm-hmm.
obviously do have to speak out about certain things, but it's also important for us to understand and draw a line as to how much of energy you're going to put in it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes
Yes.
it's not worth going on and on and on. Sometimes you voice how you feel, and that person then needs to receive it in the essence of what how it was delivered.
Yeah.
But you cannot change somebody's mind. You cannot make them accept, you know, a certain way of thinking.
Mm.
So yes, by all means express how you're feeling, but be mindful not to keep dwelling on it, where
No,
it then
that's a
becomes a
valid
rut
point.
that you fall into, in
Yeah.
trying to make sure that, okay, this person needs to understand where I'm coming from and what I'm saying, and needs to hear me. No, you express it once,
Yeah.
and you express it, from a space of trust and belief and confidence in who you are,
Mm.
and how it's received from there on, and the path that that friendship or relationship follows then is no longer in your hands. It is
Yeah.
left to the person that you've expressed it to.
Mm.
So for me,
I agree with it.
that's as far as I think I would take it in speaking out about it. And I was never of this mindset like all the time. It's something that
I
I
know.
grew into. It's something that I began to realize that I'm the only one who is now expressing and expending so much of energy onto this when there need not be.
True.
You learn to express what needs to be said, and then you let go and you detach from it, right?
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and then whatever's meant to happen from there onwards happens. um, yeah, it's a journey that you go through, and it's forever changing, um, and transforming as you transform yourself.
Mm.
And you mentioned about the gift, and that's how I see every experience that I have now.
Mm. Mm.
And I've only realized this later on in my life, because I would question a lot of things, and I'd question why me, and I would slip into that victim mentality every now and again and whatnot. And it's just human nature, really.
Mm.
But
Mm.
you learn to minimize this as you experience more things in life, and as you let go of the control that you feel you need to have in life.
Mm.
So for
Mm.
me, every experience is something that is meant to come my way for me to learn something, whilst keeping in mind that there is a greater being in play. There's a greater um, divinity that is unfolding that I may have no knowledge of. So,
Mm.
whatever's coming my way is gifting me to learn, and also protecting me from something even more severe that I could have experienced.
Yeah. Yeah. I was having a conversation with my oldest son around the energy exchange that you're talking about, because there was this. there's this lady that she's a very active advocate for no maintenance or low maintenance payment to single mothers. And then I was reading how when your kids turn 18, that they can actually sue their parent for not paying the right maintenance.
We're
And
not
my son and
providing.
I were, yeah, like we were chatting about this, and I said to him, what a waste of an energetic exchange, right? Because whilst there needs to be the boundary, because now it's such a it's such a complex thing here, because if you're not getting the right level of maintenance from your ex-spouse, you as a single mother, you really battle because you got to do it all on your own, right? But in the system that we operate within in South Africa, forgive our system, I don't know who we need to go and have these hard conversations with, but it's always the mothers that are actually at a loss, because one, they need to invest disproportionate amount of time to go to these courts and go and fight for the rights of their children, only for that very government officials to say, well, you need this, that, and the other, or leaning towards the father who is not really fulfilling his role properly. And I said to my son, well, isn't that a waste of time? Imagine what one could be doing with that investment of that time. And we were talking about how much I earn per hour in whether it's my coaching or facilitation. And I was like, now think about that in context, that would be X amount of revenue that I could have generated. And so the boundary here is is a different kind of boundary. The boundary here is I'm not going to get involved with the toxicity of what's not happening, or how I'm not going to be able to control the outcome of someone else's behavior of not showing up in the way that they should be. So I think it speaks to your point as well in other relationships, because I have felt that tugging in the beginning of, well, I need closure. And as I'm getting older, I'm just walking away, Jamila. And it's so empowering to be able to do that, because the amount of mental, physical, emotional power it consumes from us is the contributing factor to the burnout again, right?
100%, Anissa, 100%. And it goes to this point time and time again, is that we can only control who we are and our
Mhm.
actions.
True.
Whatever's left in someone else's um, means to behave in a certain way or whatever, that's on them. You can stand on your head, you can scream from the hilltops, whatever it is. If someone doesn't want to change, they will not change,
Yeah.
especially not by you screaming, yelling, being in somebody's face. No. The same way that we wouldn't change if someone were doing that to us, okay? But however, I mean,
Mhm.
like with people pleasers, that you might have to look at that from a different perspective. But having said that, I think the minute that you let go of that supposed control that you wish to have over someone else's behavior, you
Mhm.
just have a surge of energy flow within yourself. Okay,
True.
and I think for me, and like you as well, is that I went once to court, and
Mm.
it filled me with the greatest fear, because I mean, I was in Johannesburg, I was new to Johannesburg, I had to go into the CBD of Johannesburg, and I was beyond afraid, because I came from this very sheltered background, and
Mm.
this, my son felt it, which when I saw his face when I returned from court, thought to myself, is this really worth it? Why can't I use this energy in developing who I am and creating that independence for myself, which is what I did. And I focused everything on how I could better myself, how I could make sure that I became more successful in the career that I was in, um, and concentrated all of my abilities to self development and self
That
improvement. And the minute that I did that, Anissa,
mm,
um, I just felt so light, and so many more opportunities came my way. The sense of accomplishment that comes from it, and then you
mm,
just let go of that person, or whoever it is that you feel owes you, and you realize that I can only do and keep myself accountable for me, and whatever
mm,
they choose in their life, they are going to be accountable for, and they will have to answer for. And
yeah,
it's given me the greatest and the most beautiful relationship that I treasure most in this world with my son, because we are closer than ever. And I am so grateful because I was able to enjoy and appreciate and experience so many beautiful moments of him growing up to who he is today, and watching him develop into an adult and a responsible man. And no one can ever take that from you, no one.
no,
And that is
no.
that is priceless, and that is yet another gift that we
Mm,
are
mm.
blessed with.
I
So I
mean,
think
that's
it's all a perspective of how you think about it, or how you want to think about it. Because you can wallow in, I'm gonna take this to court every second day, and I'm gonna make sure that I, rather take accountability for who you are and start to develop as a person in that way and be
absolutely.
successful.
Absolutely. That was actually the point around redefining success through grief and growth. So if you're looking at whatever you're grieving about, it's this experience, it's saying, well, how do I take that and transform that energy into rather growth for myself or for those around me? And it's so beautiful because we grieve not getting a promotion, we grieve losing the income, like a retrenchment. There's so much the grief of the relationship. Maybe the relationship had to come to an end anyway, So there's so much linked to redefining, but also in the reframe. And I love that because in the reframe, it's okay, who am I? And one of my clients this week, it was very interesting. I'd asked him to write a letter to his future self. And what does that look like and feel like? And I think it's a beautiful way to be able to say, well, if I'm in this flow state in my life and I've established boundaries and I'm not feeling like I'm moving to burnout and I'm leading myself more effectively, what does it look like? And it was such a profound experience for him doing it because he's what he came to realize is what was more profound. He came to realize is that he has forgotten himself and that he had prioritized everything and everyone else, and that he had forgotten how sacred it was to spend time with himself, with nobody else. And I think the burnout that we reach is because we do forget who we are. We do forget knowing ourselves so intimately that we give parts of ourselves away each time so willingly, and then we reach that stage of resentment, which causes the burnout in the end, and that resistance in the relationships that you speak about, because we're trying to fight for closure or an answer or uh, bending the person to respond in different ways. So I must say that it's not any destination, people. This is a continuous journey because we may be facilitators, coaches, or practitioners in this space, guiding our own clients. But I can attest to being in the zone and just going full force and forgetting. And I'm not going to lie, I'm going to own up now and say in the last few weeks, there were nights I go to bed 1, 2, because I have so many moving parts happening. And I'm like, what the hell is wrong with me? Surely, if I am, managing my own time, I'm not needing to report into anyone. Why am I doing that? And it's again that high standards that we set for ourselves, because we set them for ourselves and they're impossible at times. So then we end up having to go and work a bit later. Because the last time I worked at those disproportionate hours, I was employed in corporate. And that was the battle scars that I had of working in corporate. And one of the deciding factors. And I was like, yikes. So who's the common denominator here? It is me, you know? So I was like needing to figure out, well, surely if I carry on in this way, I'm going to be ratty. My relationships with my kids are not going to, I'm going to be on a short fuse, and lack of sleep and lack of poor diet, because all of those factors are the, so it comes back to lifestyle. And I was like, this is not the blueprint that I wanted to design for myself based on being an independent business owner. And I had to take some hard stock and say, well, hold on, what's important? And what is this about? Who is it for? So it's asking ourselves this hard question.
Absolutely, Anissa. And I think, it comes back time and time again to self accountability
Mm,
because, you have an impact on people around you as well.
mm,
You can be a cause of someone's burnout as well because you haven't done the work for yourself. And I find
mm,
that this is so common in corporates where you have people in spaces, of managerial levels who have absolutely no understanding of how to manage people, and then the resultant, effects that it has on people other than that. I'm just going to put you on silent for a minute.
yes, that sounds pretty intense. It sounds like there's an ambulance or emergency. That feels like it's adding to my anxiety in the back end.
It actually
But
shouldn't. It should make you feel very playful because that is the Hamleys train, and all the kids are going crazy on it. Of course, it's school holidays, so they're absolutely enjoying it. And you know what? Maybe sometimes that's what you need to do. It's some radical action that you need to do, and maybe perhaps just jump onto that train and allow yourself to feel what you felt like when you were little and you were a kid and you just never had all
true.
these pressures on yourself. So important for you to revisit experiences or
Mm,
activities like that, which help us to deal with burnout, which help us to
mm,
understand, okay, you know what, I've literally gone off the edge now, and I've
mm,
lost touch with what's important in life. With just having your shoes off and feeling the grass or the dirt under your feet or the sea sand, or
true.
going on a hike and enjoying nature for what it is, or sitting by yourself, as you said, and maybe writing or just being in that existence of who
Mm,
we naturally are as people. I think we get so caught up in accomplishing and achieving and being recognized that we forget about what's truly important in ourselves. And the sad thing about this is that um, we develop a culture of youngsters who believe that this is how life is meant to be. And it's
true.
highly irresponsible of us to do that, Anissa, because once you get into this level or this toxicity of burnout experience because we have these misconceptions of what success looks like,
Mm,
it's very difficult for you to then go back to who you are and the person that you used to be. It's difficult
mm,
for you to get to back to those levels as well. And what's sad also is that, you know, like you have percentages and demographics and drivers and all the rest of it about burnout. But those are not true figures because there's so many
true.
people who are not indicating, who are not
Mm,
stepping up and saying, yes, I'm going to, to fill out this analytics tool to determine whether I have burnout or I have high levels of stress. And
mm.
how many of us do that? Or how many of us
Yeah.
have the opportunity to do that? So just a handful, right? And I mean, I just want to give you some. some some burnout rates, right, in corporate. It says global corporate burnout. The 2025 Forbes study reports that 66% of workers are burnt out, an all-time high, with return to the office mandates exacerbating the issue, obviously after COVID, right?
mm, mm,
And then there's another international office-based survey, um, which says that 48% are currently experiencing burnout, and this is surveying 11,000 desk based and frontline employees across Australia, Canada, France, Germany, India, Japan, the UK, and US. 48%. Okay. So when you look at younger employees who are at a higher risk, Reed from UK found that 91% of 18 to 24-year-olds and 94% of 25 to 34-year-olds report burnout symptoms compared to 85% overall. So if you just start looking, at those figures,
it's
it's
alarming.
it's
It's
shocking.
alarming.
It really
Yeah.
is. And when you look at what the key stresses or the top stresses are, key drivers are excessive workloads, long hours, unclear boundaries on after hour work, lack of management support, and toxic workplace culture.
Mm, mm,
So a lot of people who are, in their have just qualified from college or university or whatever and are entering the workplace are finding this to be the culture.
mm, mm.
So you're moving from a young age into this toxic culture, and then what do you think that that's life for you?
Yeah, I mean, I like these points that you're raising, and those, I mean, those statistics are alarming. And as you rightfully say, it's not a true reflection, actually, if you really have to dig a bit deeper, right? Because we have access to diagnostic tools at our disposal. But yet, as facilitators and practitioners, when we approach these corporates to say, let's do the work and let's diagnose the root cause and where these problems are, I find that there's still a resistance to invest in personal development or these sort of aspects because in their mind it's not a tangible. And the more we're saying it's diagnostic, we'll be able to give you a baseline. So all the work that I do, Jamila, it's focused on understanding the person, creating that level of self-awareness. Because if they have self-awareness, they know how they're sabotaging themselves because we're making the unconscious conscious. And this is the biggest problem that we're finding in this. I almost want to call it epidemic because it is. If it's, we can't call it a pandemic yet because obviously the numbers aren't that true reflective point for it, but it is an epidemic where people are afraid to speak up even because they fear losing their jobs. And then you spoke about managers, and I think you phrased it correct because there are very little leaders of people. There are way more managers of people. And when you're managing people, you're managing processes, systems, and things, and you're not driving human connection. Again, so the diagnostic approach is one part of it. Let's diagnose and get to the root cause. But the solution is about cultivating meaningful connection, getting to know your people intimately, and really understanding them in a holistic sense. And my frustration right now in the corporate landscapes is that they always say, well, you know what, we don't have budgets right now for personal development because, it's all rah-rah and how do we measure it, etc., etc. But the alarming fact is your churn rate of people leaving your companies, number one, when quite frankly, you're losing intellectual capital that you've invested in and the cost of replacing that intellectual capital is far higher. So you may as well have just invested the right level of personal development interventions that can diagnose and constantly measure and evaluate. And I think for me, this is something I'm very passionate about. There is a big problem in even in the skills development landscape where I'm working now, Jamila, is that there's this concern that we're getting people through skills development program students, and then we're not really setting them up effectively for the work world. It's like you said, they're going in to these toxic environments. And I was asked a question by the chief of people at the time that was doing this roundtable discussion, and she said, if I had a wish list, what would that be? If money wasn't an obstacle, what was the one thing that I'd like to implement? And I said it's more diagnostic tools, and not just at the start of taking people on a journey, but throughout. It's the they start a journey, during, and post. So, for instance, if we put people in a new role in that skills development landscape, do we check in with them to say, how are you doing? Because we've given you technical and functional skills training, but have we given you really people, human connection skills development? And that's where the gap is.
100% I agree with you on that, Anissa. But I find that it has to come back to self accountability and
Mm,
feeling confidence in yourself. Because when you feel like that confidence within yourself, you're not you're not operating from a space um, of being threatened.
mm,
Okay,
mm,
where you'll allow someone to grow and to succeed and to progress, and that's what we're not finding. So you can have
mm,
all of these diagnostic tools, but if you don't have the managers or the senior um, people in place to start to encourage the employees to take this on, um, to feel a level of comfort and trust to be able to be honest about how they're feeling, about what their workplace conditions are like, and not to be targeted or finding yourself in a space where I might lose my job over this, for being honest. So we've got to change all of those dynamics within corporates, and I think it's important for corporates nowadays to understand the value of investing in an individual as opposed to an employee, from a holistic perspective, because this drives it drives the bottom line, literally. Okay, because if you are going to deprive people, you're going to create a culture of distrust, of non-trust. If you don't have an HR division, that effectively makes people confident in knowing that you can come to them and be honest about what your workplace conditions are like, what the climate is like, what do you need, irrespective of how, you know, like, people should be able to come to you and express to you, no matter how bizarre it might be, is this is what it needs, or this is what it's going to take to make the workplace better. So I feel that there needs to be a lot of transparency within HR, and executing these diagnostic tools for it to be successful for people, and obviously the resultant um, implications of it. And I
mm.
agree with you on the fact that um, you have to look at return of investment. You have to look at what the cost of replacement of your staff members is going to be,
Sure.
because that's you'd rather you'd rather focus on empowering and educating and learning more about your current workforce than having them leave and having to replace and to retrain and to all the attached costs that comes with that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that a mindset shift is what's required, and not
Yes.
just
Yes.
from management level or from seniors within the corporate, but especially from HR
Yeah.
perspective. Um,
Ja- Jamina, I wanna bring us back also. If we take away corporate and we bring back to entrepreneurs and founders, I mean, I was on a 67 minutes mentoring session in for Mandela Day. As for those that don't know, from South Africa, we have a 67 minutes of paying it forward, if I can use that word, in any context, whether you want to be an advisor, coach, or mentor. And so on this session, one of the ladies was saying that, she works in a male dominated industry. She owns her business. She's got all the quality standards for her product that she puts to market. But somehow, she's not getting customers. And she's found a way to get a seat at the table. Now, what I'm finding is a gap. And again, here we have another divide and lack of inclusivity. In the entrepreneurial landscape, again, you have um, I think it's 70 odd percent, almost 80% of an investment funding going to males, not to women. And so that imposter syndrome that we alluded to, that hidden weight of imposter syndrome, comes up strongly. Because one, you're a woman, you've got to fight twice as hard to get a seat at the table, never mind a voice. And now you found a way to qualify your seat, and yet your voice is still not being heard as strongly. However, the self-accountability factor here plays a big role. One of the things that I said is, how are we even self-sabotaging based on these feelings of not being good enough or worthy enough, or that we don't belong in these spaces? We haven't really acknowledged, again, whether you're in corporate now or an entrepreneur founder, the same applies here. If that mindset of yours is you needing to fight and hustle to be seen, heard, and understood and acknowledged or recognized, there's your answer already, because you haven't established that accountability and self-belief to be able to speak your truth from a different vantage point, and not in order to sell hard. Because if this individual, I mean, she's dynamic, she's done everything, she's in this male dominated industry, having proven through standards for a particular product offering that she's at the level of the premium products in the market, and she's just launched last year. But not being able to acquiring customers is because who am I showing up as within those spaces? So energetically, people feel that if you don't show up in your work and in your value.
Yes, yes. And I think that, we when it comes to this parity, I think we need to look at ourselves again, and stop comparing ourselves to our male counterparts. Start looking at and comparing who we are today to who we can be tomorrow as individuals. And once you take that self accountability into perspective, Anissa, I've found that you start to focus a lot more on what's most important, and you forget about that competitive element of who else is out there, and that this is a man's world and all the rest of it. The minute that you start to try to improve on who you are from yesterday to today to who you're going to show up as tomorrow, you begin and take on and embody a different sort of energy. And like you say, this reflects, it radiates from within. And this has a direct impact on who's around you. For me, and for many years, I felt this imposter syndrome because I was in corporate, and I felt, coming from my background where I couldn't speak to men, and we shouldn't be associating with men, and that your position as a woman was just to be the caregiver and look after the home and kids and all the rest of it. It was a very difficult mindset for me to evolve from. And once I was in corporate space, I always had that feeling of insecurity, like I didn't belong there, I wasn't good enough for it. And then I also subsequently then felt, okay, well, I need to be seen as an equal to my male counterparts. But as you progress through life and you progress in your quest to understand who you truly are as a person, you start to prioritize that over everything else. And once you start to do that, you begin to understand who you are from a different perspective. You begin to understand and realize what your purpose is, what your passion is. And when you focus 100% on what that passion is and become absorbed by it, you create this beautiful, radiant energy that is so forceful that just naturally flows out of you. It naturally overtakes any of the insecurities or the imperfections or the, whatever you feel you lack, into something that grows continuously into a form of confidence, beautiful self-confidence that is humble in its essence as well, and which allows you to focus on what you need to do and what you need to bring to this world. And that creates beautiful, endless opportunities that are there meant for you, prescribed for you.
I love that because it's one of the points we said is building a life and career rooted in purpose, not perfection. Because perfectionism is from lack and scarcity and not feeling abundant. So you want to do everything right. And I mean, I'm speaking from lived experience there too. I'm never going to show up here in this conversation as if I fully have arrived. And those parts of myself will always be there, the pleaser, savior, rescue mentality and behavior is ingrained. It's part of who we are. But it's certainly for me been a shift in saying the fable of the two wolves, which one am I going to feed? And so when we choose to no longer feed the one that is sabotaging us and rather the one that is serving us, but beyond ourselves, I think that's what's the essence of what everything that you've just beautifully and so passionately expressed there is that when we're not focused on the outside world, we don't project externally. When we focus on our divinely given purpose, we are in our truth. And so we focus on who we are serving. In the same way that you and I have always stated, if nobody shows up to this podcast or live stream, it doesn't matter to us anymore. We've remained consistent, is the word, because we have certainty within ourselves. And in a world where everything is uncertain and always gives us lots of doubts, the certainty within ourselves becomes the constant driver for us to remain grounded in our truth and in our divine essence. And so that's what I want to leave in terms of my closing point in this chaotic world that we live. The only way we're going to stay rooted and grounded is if we know and come back home to ourselves and stop blaming, naming, shaming, projecting, moving out of victim consciousness, because all of those things are the significant contributors to your burnout because you have not learned how to cultivate self mastery, how to own yourself fully, that nobody or nothing, if the storms come in, if COVID hits us, if we have a dry patch in your business or you've lost all your income, nothing is going to deter you from being intentional and focused. And I'm really grateful for our conversation because it reinforces and reminds us just to come back to truth each time. So I'm grateful to you, Jamila, for your wisdom, for always sharing from such amazing heart-led energy rather than ego-focused wisdom that people can sometimes do. And that's the other thing. Be careful about ego-led um, wisdom, or I don't know if ego-led can be wisdom, but ego-led driven behaviors, because that's going to lead you to burnout as well. You're not going to be in flow state.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. And you're always going to feel that's a form of sabotage and
Mm,
imposter syndrome as well, because you're projecting yourself to be this perfect being, all the
mm.
time, and we're not. It's the last thing that we
No.
are. Yes, there are certain Um, yeah, you know, flashes of perfection that come from us, but those also are gifts that have been given to us, that we should be
Mm,
grateful for, but by no means are we in ourselves perfect. And it's knowing that. However, it's also, I think, understanding and realizing and appreciating the divine power that we have within us to accomplish things if we just work hard at it, and if we work the way that we are meant to in a state of flow,
mm,
then we unfold as we are meant to and we receive as we are meant to. And I think that for me, the biggest lesson I think would be is just understanding that and coming to that realization, but also to just always be kind to yourself. Kind
mm,
to
mm.
yourself in understanding that we have all of these imperfections, but we're meant to have it, right? Otherwise,
Yeah,
we'd be divine in totality, which we are not.
that's beautiful to end off with. Be kind to yourselves so that you can be kind to others and just continue leading in love and heart and spirit and soul. For those that joined us from Instagram, thank you very much. It's been very quiet here. We didn't have our regulars, but we also know that Instagram has got some technical difficulties. Even though we are live, they have mentioned on StreamYard we have challenges. So for those watching the replay, please let us know how you found this conversation. What relates to you? How can you share insight with us on how to move forward differently? What lessons have you learned, and sort of what interventions that we may not have thought about that you can share with us? And so we will see you again same time next week, come rain or shine or storm. We will be here, come in the mall or not in the mall. We will be here. Thank you for your support. And Jamila, always a pleasure. And I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Anissa. Lovely chatting with you. And the thing is that we become and reflect the people that we are surrounded by.
Mm,
So in your wisdom, I've learned. In your experiences, I've learned. And in your friendship, I've learned. So thank you
oh,
for that, and for continually being a source of strength and guidance for me. So I'm very grateful for that, and grateful for the people that I have around me. Grateful for everyone who comes on and watches our, our all-time favorite and day one Ronald, who's here with us, supporting us from day one. We really truly appreciate you. And yeah, just be kind to each other, and let us be a source of strength for each other so that we can navigate through the challenges easily.
do you know what I've just noticed? This was episode 80.
Wow. Really? Oh my gosh.
I was looking at the other screen to see what is this. It's episode 80. We are number 80 episode today. Can you believe it?
Unbelievable. I was just chatting to you earlier on, telling you that I'd met with this company. And do you know that it's what now? August, September, October. November will be 2 years that since we've started this.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it. It doesn't feel like it because it's become a lifestyle for me. Like this Friday is my mirror
Yeah.
back to myself through your wisdom, through our guest wisdom, through the comments that come through. And it's just been so enlightening to just be in this space every week, eh?
For sure. And I've had a lot of people who've asked, like, why don't we pre record these and why do we do it
Mm,
live? But it just gives it
mm,
so much
mm,
more realness, I feel. And
mm,
like you say,
mm.
it's become part of my lifestyle now. I know on a Friday afternoon, and everybody else also knows. Don't bother
Me
her on a
too.
Friday afternoon because this is she's busy with her podcast if they're not listening in. Um, yeah, but I mean, it's just gone by so quickly, and I guess that's testament to it being something that's meant to be, right?
It is. It is. I'm
Yeah.
grateful to you. Thank you. And I'll see you next week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend as I am going to with lots of rest.
Yes, well deserved rest.
I will. I will. Mwah. Take
Thank you,
care. Bye.
everyone.